I came home early from a business trip and found my wife's things gone. I'm leaving for someone more successful, she texted. I didn't respond, just called my lawyer. 48 hours later, she realized she left with nothing, and my phone exploded with desperate calls. The silence of the house was deafening, a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of Max's excited barks and Emily's soft humming as she worked on her latest project. I stood in the doorway, my suitcase still in hand, feeling like an intruder in my own home. The note on the kitchen counter, written in Emily's elegant script, was like a dagger to my heart. I'm leaving for someone more successful. The words echoed in the emptiness, each letter a testament to the life we had built together, now crumbling before my eyes. I glanced at my phone, the screen still displaying the cold, digital message she had sent. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I couldn't bring myself to type anything. What could I say? Instead, I dialed Mark's number, my lawyer and one of the few constants in my life. Hey Jake, what's up? Mark's voice was a lifeline in the sea of confusion I was drowning in. Emily left, I managed to choke out, the reality of the situation hitting me like a ton of bricks. She left a note and a text. There was a pause on the other end, the kind that told me Mark was processing the gravity of what I had just said. I'm sorry, man. Do you want to talk about it? Or do you need something else? I need to know what my options are, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. I want to understand what this means legally. Mark sighed, the sound heavy with empathy. All right, let's meet up. I'll come over and we can go through everything. But Jake, think about what you really want. The next morning, the reality of Emily's departure sank in. The house felt emptier than ever. I walked through our home, noticing the absence of her things. Her favorite paintings were gone, the ones she had picked out on our first trip to Paris. The scent of her perfume, which used to linger in the air, was replaced by the sterile smell of absence. It was as if she had never existed there. I spent the day in a daze going through the motions. I fed Max, who seemed as confused as I was. His tail didn't wag with the usual enthusiasm, and he kept looking at the door, waiting for Emily to walk through it. I called Mark again, and he advised me to wait before making any decisions. Give it a few days, Jake. Emotions are high right now, he said, his voice a mix of concern and professionalism. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept wandering back to Emily. Why now? Why like this? I remembered our last conversation before I left for San Francisco. It was mundane, about who would take out the trash. There were no signs of discontent, no hints of an affair. Yet here I was, alone in our home, with only the I echo of her words in my head. As the day turned into night, I sat alone in our living room, the silence deafening. The room where we had shared so many laughs, where we had made love on the couch, now felt like a void. I could still see the indentations on the cushions where she used to sit, her laughter filling the space. Now it was just me, the ticking of the clock, and the cold reality of her absence. 2 days after Emily left, my phone began to ring incessantly. It was her. I hesitated but answered. Her voice was frantic. Jake, I've made a terrible mistake. I left with nothing. I need to talk to you. I was stunned. The woman who left for someone more successful was now desperate. She explained that in her rush to leave, she hadn't thought through the logistics. She had no access to our joint accounts, no car, and nowhere to stay. I listened, my heart a mix of anger and pity. You left for success, Emily. What happened to that? I asked, my voice cold. She sobbed. I was wrong, Jake. I thought I wanted more, but I realized what I had was enough. Can we talk, please? I agreed to meet her at a local cafe, not out of hope for reconciliation, but to understand what had driven her to such a drastic decision. At the cafe, Emily looked different. Her usual glow was replaced by a pale, tired complexion. She sat across from me, her eyes avoiding mine. I'm sorry, Jake. I was caught up in the idea of something better, something more glamorous. But when I got there, it was all Hollow. I leaned back, trying to process her words. What do you mean, hollow? She took a deep breath, her hands nervously playing with her coffee cup. The man I left you for, he promised me the world. But it was all about appearances. There was no substance, no real connection. It was like living in a show where everything was staged for social media, for the next big deal. I felt like a prop in his life, not a partner. I felt a pang of sympathy, but the hurt was still fresh. So, you realized you traded substance for show? Emily nodded, tears welling up. I missed our quiet mornings, our simple dinners, the way you'd look at me like I was the only person in the room. I missed us, Jake. I missed what we had. I looked away, the memories flooding back. The warmth of her touch, the laughter we shared, Emily's confession hung in the air, heavy with regret and the raw edge of truth. I watched her, the woman I once thought I knew inside out, now a stranger with familiar eyes. Her tears were real, but so was the betrayal that had torn through our lives like a storm. He was just using me, Jake. I was a trophy, not a partner, she said, her voice breaking as she wiped away the tears that streaked down her cheeks. I listened, feeling a mix of vindication and sadness. Here was the woman I loved admitting her mistake, but the trust was shattered. The vibrant Emily, who had once filled our home with laughter and warmth, was now a shadow of her former self, her spirit dimmed by the harsh reality of her choices. I need your help, Jake. I have nowhere to go, she pleaded, her eyes searching mine for any sign of the compassion we once shared. I was torn. Part of me wanted to help, to show the compassion she hadn't shown me when she left. But another part, the part that felt betrayed, wanted to walk away, to let her face the consequences of her actions. The cafe around us buzzed with the usual morning crowd, oblivious to the drama unfolding at our table. I could see the barista glancing over, probably wondering about the intense conversation. Emily's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee, her fingers brushing against mine. The touch, once electric, now felt like a spark of pain. I know I've hurt you, Jake, more than I can ever express, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'm asking for your help, not because I deserve it, but because I have nowhere else to turn. The weight of her words pressed down on me. I remembered the nights we spent planning our future, the dreams we shared, now tainted by her decision to chase after a mirage of success. I need to think, Emily, I finally said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You've asked for something that isn't just about us anymore. It's about trust, about what's left of us. She nodded, understanding the gravity of her request. The silence stretched between us, filled with the weight of our past and the uncertainty of our future. After a long moment, I spoke, my voice firm, yet not without compassion. You can stay here until you get back on your feet, but we're not getting back together, I stated clearly. Emily's eyes met mine, a flicker of hope mixed with the acceptance of my conditions. Over the next few weeks, Emily tried to rebuild her life. She started freelancing again, slowly regaining her independence. However, the dynamic between us had irrevocably changed. There was a new distance, a cautious respect that hadn't been there before. One evening, as we sat in the living room, the air was thick with the unspoken. Emily broke the silence, her voice soft but steady. Jake, I've realized something. Success isn't about wealth or status. It's about integrity, about being true to oneself and others. You've shown me that. I nodded, acknowledging her words but keeping my emotions guarded. The trust was broken, and while I could offer her a place to stay, the warmth we once shared was replaced by a polite, necessary distance. Has Emily truly changed, or is this another manipulation? The question lingered in my mind, a shadow over the fragile peace we had established. Emily continued, her gaze fixed on the floor. I've been thinking a lot about what I did, about the choices I made. I was wrong, Jake. So wrong. And I'm not just saying this to get back in your good graces. I mean it. I've learned that the real value in life isn't in what you can show off, but in the connections you nurture, the love you share. Her words were sincere, and for a moment, I felt a tug at my heart, a reminder of the woman I once loved deeply. But the scars of her betrayal were still fresh, and I couldn't afford to let my guard down. "I appreciate your honesty, Emily," I said, my voice measured. "But trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. It takes time, and actions speak louder than words." She nodded, understanding the months passed, and Emily moved out, finding her own place. Our interactions became cordial, almost friendly, but the intimacy was gone. I watched her rebuild her life, and in some ways, it felt like watching a part of my own life being rebuilt, but from a distance. One day, as I was walking Max, I ran into Emily. She was with a new man, someone who seemed genuinely interested in her for who she was, not what she could offer. She introduced him, and there was a lightness in her eyes that hadn't been there for a long time. "Jake, this is Daniel. He's good for me," she said, a smile playing on her lips. I smiled back, genuinely happy for her. "I'm glad, Emily. Truly." As I walked away, I reflected on the journey. Emily's departure had been a shock, a betrayal, but it also led to a profound realization about what success truly means. It's not about what you gain, but about what you value and sometimes what you lose. Now, as I stood alone with Max, the weight of my own future began to settle in. The lessons learned from Emily's departure were not just about her, they were about me, about what I wanted my life to be. I started to focus on my own growth, both personally and professionally. I took on projects that excited me, not just those that promised the biggest paycheck. I found joy in the simple things again, like watching the sunrise with Max, or spending time with friends without the pressure of networking or career advancement. My work began to reflect this shift. I started a new venture, one that was about creating meaningful experiences rather than just selling a product. It was about connection, about making a difference, not just in my life, but in the lives of others. I also began to explore new relationships, but with a different perspective. I wasn't looking for someone to complete me. I was looking for someone to share in the completeness I was cultivating within myself. One evening, as I sat in the quiet of my home, now filled with my own touches, my own art, and my don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.